Well, things are progressing very nicely with the repointing project. I'm done with the cellar area. I'll be on to the crawl space. It's a little bit more cramped. It's about 5 feet tall in the middle. This cellar part is about 7 feet tall. And this is the base of the chimney. At the top here I had a hole that was knocked through for some unknown reason, possibly a flue, maybe a water heater flue or a furnace flue. And I patched that up, got the support under that so that the brick on top of it wouldn't collapse. And you see this arch here. This is a hollow area that was filled in with bricks for some reason. I think maybe to contain ashes that were dumped down the ash pit. And these the bricks here were unsupported, and so they failed, or at least one of them did, and cracked open. So I put this wood box here to hold it back up and repointed, replaced that one broken brick. I was thinking about doing maybe an arch or something a little bit more elegant than this wooden box, but I decided that it wasn't worth the effort. These bricks, for as bad as they were, as far as needing repointing, they were still very firmly held together. What little mortar was left was still holding it together. And anyway, this is all repointed now, and we're ready for the cramped quarters of the crawl space. So here we go. It's through here. This is the next object of repointing. I've got this, the base of one of the chimneys, another chimney. Same thing, it's had that brick infill in the middle for the ash pit. It's got rough, kind of rusticated frame bricks here, foundation bricks for the chimney base itself, and then these more refined bricks for the infill. Same thing here with the terrible powdery mortar that just turned into sand when the lime leached out. And we'll be scraping out all those joints, getting them ready for repointing. You can see how much mortar spilled actually out of the ash pit. And I'm going to look up in there and see if maybe, if things need repointing inside, then I might just be taking all these bricks out in the middle. It's not necessary, it's only there to contain the ashes. And keep going. You can see how bad things look over here. Again, all the powdery mortar. Look at all this mortar at the base. All that shook out when they were doing the construction work 2 doors down. So you can just see the magnitude of just how much mortar has been lost here in this wall. So I'll be doing, this will be my cozy little home for the next couple of days. Kind of wedged in here between the ductwork and this lumber that I'm storing down here. But this section of video my plan is to show a lot more of the repointing itself. My last video was more of the finish work and very brief on the repointing ins and outs. So I'll be showing a little more of that this time around. And stay tuned. Okay, I'm going to show a little bit more about the mortar mixing process. I think it's very important to use very specific volumes and not to use a shovelful or a heaping bowl or whatever. And also keep in mind that you want to mix 9 parts sand, 1 part white cement, and 2 parts lime. And when you get all that together, it has to be in the amount of mortar that you can lay in the next, let's say, half hour. So you don't, if your bowl or whatever you're using is enormous, then you're going to mix way too much mortar. So what I found was this little bowl that I'm using there worked to give me about a good batch of mortar. Sometimes I can do a batch and a half using that same measurement. And luckily it's by volume. If it were by weight, it would be totally weird, and I don't think you could really do it by weight with this. The sand might be wet, so the sand might be too heavy. So that's why you do it by volume. What I'm doing is I put the bowl in there, I fill it up. This is lime. The previous bag was the white Portland. So I've got 2 units of lime, and I use a little wooden stick to scrape off the level off the top, so I know I've got exactly the right amount. And then when I'm all done getting all the ingredients in there, then I just give it a real quick mix in the bucket before I put it in the mortar pan and do the really thorough mixing. Alright, I'm going to start with this area here. These joints are pretty close together. They're small enough, they're even the vertical ones. And show you what I do. Hold the hawk up to the line, but not just below it, not in the line, obviously, because if you had it in there, then you'd pull it back out, it would pull the mortar with it. You just cram the mortar in there until it can't take any more. Kind of move it back and forth to really get that mechanical bond in there. And then kind of diagonally knock off the excess. I'm kind of cramped here and next to this ductwork. So if you get it to where it's a little bit recessed, then add a little bit more and then knock off the excess. You want it right up. Your idea here is to put as much mortar into the joint as you possibly can, because this mortar is what's going to hold the other mortar in place, the real mortar that's behind it. It's actually bearing load. Now I've cleaned out these joints. The idea is about twice as deep as the joint. Now that would not be a great idea for some of the joints I've got going on down here that are like, I don't know, 2 inches wide. You don't want 5 inches. You wouldn't have any other, I mean, you'd go right past the brick. So you just have to kind of use your head. And so you see how fast this goes. I can get the horizontal ones very quickly, very easily. Just kind of jam it in there. Now, if you have a little trouble with your getting your hawk actually stuck into the groove, the joint that you're remortaring, just hold the hawk at a kind of a slight angle, so it'll, you know, it's oblique to the joint and it will never stick into it. See, I got it kind of at an angle there, and you just go through and do that. Now the vertical ones, there's plenty of ways to do that. Let me do another line here of the horizontal. The head joints don't really hold any, they're not really load bearing, but you still want them to be good because they're holding the mortar in. Anything that holds the old mortar in is good. You gotta be able to switch sometimes, switch left to right, whichever is, you know, if you're working in a crawl space, you're gonna run into some cramped conditions like I've got right now. Now, so when I'm doing these real tight, nice joints like this, the mortar's not going to fall out when I come over a head joint. But some of these, the bigger ones, I would actually have to do the head joints first, because if I started trying to cramp mortar into the horizontal, it would just fall right out. Now, when it comes time for the head joints, you can just do this, kind of put the mortar in, jam it in there, and same procedure. It's a little bit, every time you do this, you don't really catch a lot of mortar, but it works. You can also kind of do it by the side here and sort of squeegee it in there, but I find that maybe that one doesn't exactly get the maximum amount of mortar in there. Now some of the bigger ones, what I do, this isn't one of the bigger ones, but sometimes I just put the mortar, that's why I wear these neoprene gloves, so I'm not afraid to touch the mortar. And I wouldn't do it without the gloves. It really makes your hands feel nasty and stay rough. But you can just put the mortar onto the slicker and do it that way. Now I've seen all the pros, you know, they kind of get it right off of their hawk, and that's great for them. I've never been able to do that. So I do this, but anyway, that works. All right, so this is an area here with these giant joints, these giant gaps between the bricks, and the idea is the same. In this case, you can really jam that slicker. Will actually go right into the inside the joint. And but now, if you look at this vertical, it's huge. So I just pull out the pointing trowel, and you can really deliver a huge amount of mortar at one time. Plus, it's got the narrow end, so you can really press everything in. And once again, clean off the sides and see how much you got in there. Let's do another one right here. Now those joints are huge. They're good, like 1.5 inches across. And if you try to put the mortar in over here first before filling that in, it would just fall right out. Trust me, I've tried. Now you can go back to doing what you were doing with this repointing tool. So little by little, that's how this goes, and it goes pretty quickly, as you can see. Alright, now I did this area earlier and it's complete, but that time I did this, I mixed the mortar really kind of wet, and I was a little too lazy to just go back and get another half mix of the dry mix and start over, you know, adding it to it, and so I could get a dry enough mortar. So you can see there's kind of a staining from the there's a staining from the lime on the bricks, and right now that looks, you can see it, but over time it's going to get even brighter as the bricks and the lime dry, and because they're still kind of wet right now, the staining will be a lot more obvious. So this is work that I don't mind having in my crawl space, but I think if I had done that on the outside of my house, I would have been pissed. Overall, I mean, it looks better than it did with all the missing mortar. You can see here's another one with the staining. That did not come out with when I beat it with the brush. So that's what happens when you use a too wet mortar mix. So beware. Alright, I'm finished repointing this area. I had to put this little access back together. There were about 4 bricks that were just totally collapsed. Had to use some really giant mortar joints because the whole thing kind of sunk down. That's not really all that supported down there. I think it's just sitting on the dirt, but I didn't want to do it any better. It's been hanging in there for 120 years, so I figure it's going to last. So here's the rest of it, all repointed except for whatever mortar was actually still in good shape. And the only step left to do is to hit it with the brush to finish those joints. Now the new bricks, the bricks that I just freshly relayed, they're a little too fragile for that, so I'm just going to leave those alone, but I'll hit the rest of them, and you can hit them pretty hard, and you drive that mortar into the joint that way. This little step really solidifies the mortar into the joint, and it gives it a nice finish. Nice, perfectly even with the edges of the brick. It knocks off the mortar on the brick. Anything that's stuck onto it will knock right off. And a lot of people say that it gives the lime a little more access to air, so it can harden quicker. And that's probably true, because if you really slick the surface down and there's Portland cement on that slick surface, then that doesn't really breathe very well. Now I'm going to be careful around here for the new bricks. Well, they're not new, but I re-put them in. Yeah, I'm just going to tap very lightly here, just enough. Sort of loose. I found that you know, I'm always amazed just how much things set up, because you can have bricks like that actually you could just right now just push over, and there's not much holding them up, but by tomorrow you wouldn't be able to kick it over. And those bricks aren't that important. This was standing up without them. I just wanted to give it a nice finished appearance like it is built. I actually reused the bricks in the positions they were. Had to use some big hulking joints to in order to, yeah, they settled so much, but oh well. And I just can't emphasize enough how essential this step is, and just how much it gives you a professional look when you're done. And that will do it. It's done. It'll harden up over the next 28 days, and it'll be as good as new practically. So hopefully this will last more than the lime mortar did. And thanks for watching.